And we are live. And I'm here with Ryan Foland, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from the United States. Well, he's still there, and I'm in Europe. But I've been following Ryan on his podcast journey for a couple of years now. I got to tell you guys, he's one of my favorite podcast hosts. He's a podcaster and he's an author. He's a four-time TED speaker. He's a speaker coach, and he has a lot of many hats, which I want to explore with him. I'm just listening to his book, which is called Ditch the Act. Ditching the Act.
Ditch the act. Yes, yes.
Ditch the Act. That's right. Audio version, obviously. Go
Yeah,
get a
yeah.
copy.
I
Yeah,
got a
cheers,
hard
man.
copy. I got a hard copy here as well, right? Yeah.
Boom. That's right. So today we're going to talk about the surprising power of the real you, or we're going to see what we're going to talk about. But Ryan, why don't you tell us in 47 seconds a little bit of a brief story about who you are and where you come from?
47 seconds. I love it. I think what's important to understanding who I am is understanding where I come from. And I grew up in a family of educators who really loved the ocean. And so from my early childhood, it was a mesh of being out on the water, sailing, being immersed in nature, and then essentially all the other stuff that happened during the school year. But I really lived for the summers. And that worked against me because I was more focused on spending time on an island than I was developing the friendships maybe at school. I was an easy outcast. I was the only ginger with freckles and kind of, didn't really feel like I belonged. And that was tough. I think we all have challenges as kids. And for me, that sense of belonging was really important, but it was something that I strived for. And martial arts for me was a huge part of learning how to communicate with strength, with confidence. I think that I was a target because I was just not comfortable and I was weak and my body would share that. And so martial arts was the first, I guess, exposure to communication. And I think that I recognize the power of your body language and the power of eye contact and the power of how we communicate. So I think at an early age, I was excited about um, being a better communicator. Now, flash forward, I thought I could use those skills. I studied theater in college, didn't really understand it before I got there. And I also studied business. So I thought business and theater, there's a lot of people doing great business, but the best business is entertaining, and the best business you can clearly communicate concepts, and the best business is somebody who you get excited to listen to versus the mah, 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 mah. So I thought, hey, Hollywood is a great connection between business and art. And so I went after a stint in Hollywood and I got internships at ABC and Moo Kelly Productions, and I was on the set, and everybody was like, dude, you got a lot of energy. Calm down. It's going to be about 30 years until you can make any creative decisions. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah. And so I went broke trying to chase after my Hollywood dream and ended up sort of defaulting back to the business side of things and made a bunch of money in mortgages and then lost everything with everybody in 2008. And that just sort of created this entrepreneurial journey of, losing everything and then having big wins and then another failure. But through all that, the one thing that was the most consistent was my passion for communicating at just a higher level. And in the startup space, that's helping people understand how to communicate their ideas in a compelling way in a short amount of time. When it comes to speaking, I love to help people understand how to better market themselves, the business of yourself. And if you stitch all that together as a series of freckles that are aligned in the dots, I think that gives you an interesting idea of where I've come from. And so communication has always been important. Being around the water and the ocean, sailing is super important, and helping people with their core messaging. So when it comes to podcasts, I have a podcast about sailing called Good Jibes. I have a podcast about core messaging, what it means to communicate an idea, called the 313 Challenge. And then I have the World of Speakers, because I think speaking is the most powerful thing that we all have. We are all public speakers, by the way. I'll ask people, how many people in here are public speakers? Maybe a tenth of an audience will raise their hand. And then I say, well, sorry, everybody, but if you speak in public, then you are a public speaker. It's a scientific fact that you cannot argue either. And I, start rapping because I do that sometimes, just change it up. But it's like, I think everyone can communicate at a higher level, always. Even as you age, things about communication change. So that's me. I get excited about learning how to communicate, and you add technology into that. I'm really bullish on 5G technology, how that connects to the metaverse, how that connects with NFTs, and then you sprinkle stick figures on top of it all. And that was probably 1 minute and 22 seconds, but there you go.
And I love the fact that you show up as a very honest and true personality, like even having a podcast about sailing, right? Like one of your passions. And if highly recommend anybody who's listening right now to go out and get a copy of Ryan's book, Ditch the Act. Fantastic book. I think it's something that we need to talk about more. And I'm curious, Ryan, was there a moment in your life which made you decide, I need to ditch the act, I need to show up as my true authentic self?
There was sort of an inciting incident that helped me recognize the power of it. I had been convinced before that I needed to do that, but I didn't know how, or I didn't see it show up in the real world. And it was before one of the largest keynotes that I'd given on the largest stage that I'd given. And I had a lot of self-imposed pressure, because in order to get on these bigger stages, you have to first get on big stages, but you can't get on big stages until you're on big stages. So it's like, it's this connect. So like in the speaking world, once you can like get onto that first big stage, then other people will give you more of a chance, because nobody wants to give you the first chance. So I was a pressure cooker for myself. And in the green room, before I was going to go up, I had literally a crowning pimple on my forehead. Like, I don't get pimples. And I was just like, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. So vain, so stupid, right? But I'm like, this is a 3-camera shoot. This is what I'm going to make my speaker reel out of. And everybody's going to think I'm some pubescent with a pimple on his forehead. They're not going to take me seriously. And so, you get in your own head. And so I text my friend who I was asking for some advice. And he happened to be, at that time, we were business partners, and it's Leonard Kim, who's the co-author of my book. And he's really good at sharing. In fact, I've come to become a bit uncomfortable with how far he shares. He's self-proclaimed an example of what not to do for many things in his life, some advice that his grandpa gave him. And, ironically, he's an example of how you can share too much. And it actually was the root of, after the book was published, we went our different ways. And I think that's what makes a book so powerful, is that, like, I was the most reserved, not going to share you what's really going on. I believed in fake it until you make it. And he was the exact opposite. He's like, I'm going to tell you everything that's going wrong. I'm going to tell you how miserable I am. And I'm going to tell you how my life is terrible. And he had 10 million reads on his content. And there was something that he was doing when I first met him that like drew me to him. And it was that just utter vulnerability. So if you look at him on one scale, it's like super ultimately vulnerable, comfortable, just emotionally throwing up on everybody. And I'm the exact opposite. And so there's always this sort of push and pull on those extremes. And I was trying to learn from him to be more vulnerable. And he was probably trying to learn from me, but I don't know, whatever he was trying to learn from me. So here I am about to go on stage. And so I text him, I'm like, what the hell do? I have this huge pimple on my forehead. Like now, like, and he literally said, this is the moment that you need to tweet about it. And I was like, no, there's no way I'm going to tweet about this. He's like, he sent me actually like what to write in the tweet. And I was like, oh God, oh God, oh God, here I go. So nervous. And I just went, and I hit it. And the tweet literally was like me going like this. I have a, big talk coming up. I'm freaking out. Do I pop it? What do I do? Like, am I overthinking this? And literally the thing, not the pimple, but the tweet exploded. Like hundreds of comments started coming in. I had never had a tweet that engaged before. And it was like, team pop it, team not pop it, team wear a headband, team do this, team run for the hills. Like everything was just like everybody was like chirping in. I had a friend who just said use a concealer, and then somebody else in the green room saw it, and then they came over with concealer and they helped me out, and they're like, dude, it's okay. So I walk into this big auditorium, and on this 100-foot by 40-foot back LED screen, they had this software that was pulling up all the most recent tweets. So I walk out and it's just my face plastered across the entire stage with my pimple and all the memes and all the gifs. And I was like, oh shit, cat is out of the bag. That's it. I got a pimple. And so I run up on stage. I'm just like, my name is Ryan Foland. I have a pimple. Are you guys ready? And the whole place is just like, oh, and I was just like, this is it. Like, who cares? I have a freaking pimple. And like, how stupid and vain of me to be worried about it beforehand. And for me, that was just like, that was just the inciting incident where I'm like, I mean, I spilled coffee on myself this weekend and I tweeted it. And like, everybody came out of their own coffee confessions of what happened to them. And it's like, it just gives you a chance to relate to people. And so for most of my life, I was taught that people care about your story of success. Honestly, it might even started because my grandma would be like, for every A, you're going to get a $20 bill, which is like a jackpot when you're young. And so like everything was just like A plus or nothing. Like, why would you even share that you got a B? And so for me, I think that it was such a hard nut to crack. But once I cracked it, I'm like, oh my gosh, life is less stressful. I don't have to show up and be somebody different in when I'm around these people and then when I'm around these people. And I just felt like my anxiety lower. And what I was told, that people care about your story of success, I believe is fundamentally wrong, because you actually get intimidated by people's success. You feel FOMO, you feel jealousy. You're like, you make up excuses. Your implicit bias comes in. You're like, oh, they're made successful because they got handed it to them, or they're privileged, or they're like, all this stuff happens when you're like, look at me, I'm so great. But I found that people care more about seeing themselves in my story. And I think on the playground, a lot of us didn't get picked for basketball. And I think as you're trying to grow up, you're looking for belonging. And when you're trying to become a speaker, it is not easy. And so when I started to open up about what was really happening, people were just jumping up to support. It gave them an excuse to help me. It gave them an excuse to support me. And it just sort of helped to build a community of people who are like-minded and like my energy. And for those that don't, that's fine. You don't need to like me. So it just helped me become more confident in my own skin. And I know we talk about be comfortable in your own skin, be authentic. But for me to sort of ditch this act, and again, look, coming from a background where I didn't understand theater, never was into it, and then that was such a powerful thing for me. I think that I got stuck in putting on the act that I think people wanted to see. It's not sustainable. It doesn't feel good at the end of the day, and it's not the recipe for success that I found.
Ryan, thank you so much for sharing this. I think so many people need to hear this message, myself included. A few years ago, when I was still running my video production company, we did some very at the time, I would say, wrong decisions. I mean, from the very beginning, actually, I got into a company with somebody who's an exceptionally good professional, but we never talk about values, vision, purpose. Where do we want to go? We did some business bad decisions, got into a huge project without getting paid in advance, and all of a sudden she went to Argentina, just run away, just, and now we had this big debt, and we had to not only make it as a startup, but we need to also be repaying people back. And it was a really stressful period. On the front, I was extremely this successful guy making amazing videos and all this kind of cool stuff, right? But I was super stressed, and it was really, really difficult. And at some point, it was very hard because we still had to return some money back to people, but I just couldn't continue anymore. And it was a 2-3 months of really difficult period, and at the end we decided, okay, let's close down the company, text people how things are, just take ownership and so on. And I was like, I need some income. I'm not making money anymore, right? Like I want to be a speaker, I want to be a consultant, but I'm barely starting now. I can't just risk it on this. So I decided to get a job as a dishwasher. And imagine a person with a master degree, award-winning producer. Everybody thinks you're this successful kind of person, and I'm just all right. I'm gonna work part-time as a dishwasher, and I was resisting for several months to tell people that I'm washing dishes, right? Because I go to companies and I teach them how to be successful, and I go in front of entrepreneurs, and whenever I get invited, you're a speaker yourself. You know what it is when you're starting, you just say yes to everything.
Yes.
People, can you speak about this? Yes. Can you? Like, of course. So I go there, I speak, but I wouldn't talk about this because I was ashamed. And then we had a mastermind retreat in Bulgaria, and I was in this small, safe group of people, and they asked me, like we had this hot seat experience, so I had to share. And I was like, "Hey guys, I just want to share. I know I'm organizing this exclusive mastermind retreat, but things are not as they look. In fact, it's been really difficult, and I'm washing dishes to support myself while organizing this thing that you're at." and and people were like, people started crying, people started sharing, and people started, dude, you need to talk about this is your story, this is what you talk about. It's like, but shouldn't I wait for this to change, first? And they were like, no, now is the time to go out and talk about it. And I next speech I did, I got really inspired, and I shared, and everybody was smiling and laughing, and they come and talk to me, and they were like, I also have a part-time job because I built my thing. And I was like, wow, it is amazing what happens when you own it, and when you actually start sharing it.
That's such a great. I mean, I have freckles, so you probably can't tell, but I'm getting goosebumps right now, and I'll tell you why. It's because my dishwashing was when I ended up having to get into construction, and I was building bathrooms and kitchens, the most miserable thing ever, and I was super embarrassed about it. And we have like, and at the time I was driving a Rimini red Range Rover with 22-inch Rimini red rims that was more than the mortgage that I had stopped paying because I couldn't afford that. And then I literally, there's a point in my life where I was hiding from the repo man, like successfully for a number of months, if not longer, parking it in different places because I knew that the time was up. But my fear of letting that cat out of the bag is so fierce. And that's when you get caught into, like, you think, maybe you hide something from your partner or from your loved one, and like they don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden you blow up and then things are ruined. And it's like, why? It's because you just weren't honest with other people. And when you were telling that story, I was thinking how that related to me in my life. So it was no offense, but it was no longer about you. And I think that's the magic here. Why would somebody care that I spilt coffee on myself? And why would I tweet about it? If you look at that tweet, other people it gives them the opportunity. Oh my gosh, this one time I was doing this and this happened to me. It's almost like they're waiting for an excuse to share. And speaking is all about connection. Working with people is all about connection. And so one of the first things I'll do with people is say, do you mind if we look at your LinkedIn together? Oh, sure. Let's check it out. And, there's the topical stuff. I'll be like, I'm going to read your bio real quick. Okay. So I read the bio out loud and I say, does this show that you're a human? Does it show anything about you? Does it show any type of vulnerability? And usually the answer is no. So it's something that is just common practice, commonplace. But I love the dishwasher story. And if you think about the hero's journey, right? Luke Skywalker at a certain point washed dishes. Like everybody has their version of washing dishes, and it gives you more places to relate. You talk about
And
building rapport. It's not about, hey, how's the weather? The weather's great. Oh, it's nice out here. It's fine. It's like real rapport comes from, our dishwashing story. So that's a great powerful example.
just as a proof of that, we have somebody from the audience that's tuning in. Hello, Bridie. Thanks for being with us. And she's saying, thank you for sharing your vulnerable moments, guys. This is what I needed to hear today. amazing, and it is powerful and funny also at the same time.
It is fun. I mean, it's if you're not finding moments of fun in what goes wrong, then like, how do you learn? How do you grow from it? You know, there are some people who are probably listening who are like, I wash dishes, but I would never share, right? Like, everybody has this sort of moment. And I think that um, part of ditching the act is believing that it can work. And I don't think you really see that it works if you don't try it. And I also work in higher education at University of California, Irvine, and I love supporting, college students and people as they're getting ready for sort of their life, and interviewing, and even entrepreneurs who have to get jobs, and people who have jobs who want to be entrepreneurs. There's this idea of selling yourself, right? Job interview, even pitching yourself to a stage or a podcast. They're all very similar. And I ask people, what do you think is more important? What do you think people will hire you for? What do you think people will bring you to the stage for? What do you think people will want to work with you for? Your experience or your expertise? And so I pose that question to you. Is it your experience, your expertise, or is it a combination thereof? What do you think? Why do people hire you?
You're asking me now, right?
Yeah.
Initially, I would say both.
Okay. So it depends on my mood, but sometimes I can argue any of the points. What I think is that yes, it has to do with both. But I think people mistake that that expertise is more important. So I think we strive to become an expert. We want to showcase our expertise. Maybe we're not posting on social media yet because we don't think that we're an expert. But your expertise comes from your experience. And people have experience. If you're alive, you have experience. And the experience is usually rooted in something that went wrong. And it's usually something that you learned, so that the next time you go to approach a business with a partner, you maybe understand that you get paid before you dive too much deep into it. That was this major lesson. And now you have that experience, which someone can say, he's an expert because he's had that experience. And so if you look at ditching the act more so as opportunities to share your experiences, people will learn the lessons that you learned in that process. They'll see you as somebody who is experienced, and ultimately they can see you as an expert. And so if you truly are trying to be an expert, it's not about showcasing all the things you are an expert at. To be an expert, you're sharing all of the experiences and lessons that you've learned, which gives you the right to be considered an expert. And when you open up that, you're like, so you mean I don't have to wait until I get my first major keynote to talk about speaking? No. Talk about the journey to get there and the struggles that you're having and the lessons that you're learning. And then that is how people see that you're cutting your teeth, that you've done the work, that you understand the process, that you're going to be easy to work with. So if this idea of vulnerability is still hard to swallow, and even culturally, especially as a man, like, I'm man, I'm not vulnerable. If that's still too hard for you to believe, think about the power in sharing your experiences. But when you share those experiences, try to share the experiences where you learned the most. And those are the experiences when things go wrong. Because when they go right, you're like, sweet, I didn't really learn anything. It just sort of happened to work out. It's when you hit a wall and you're like, oh, damn, didn't see that one coming. Definitely going to watch out for that one next time. The reason I'm telling you this story is because watch out. So I think that sharing your experience, when done effectively, and not just your highlight reel, but actually the real stories, the real dishwashing stories, that is what will ultimately help people see you as an expert. It's a little counterintuitive.
I love it. And I just want to remind people who are tuning in just right now to go and get a copy of Ryan's book, Ditch the Act. You will find a bunch of, yeah, you can show it again, Ryan. There you go. You'll find a bunch of really vivid stories. And Ryan, since we're talking about sharing experiences, why don't you share one of the, or maybe another story, but the story of a big F up, and what were the lessons what's the first story that comes to mind, and what were the lessons that came out of this F up?
Gosh, one of the first lessons is on topic for this book, about how someone who I met, who became a friend, who became a business partner, and then wrote a book, which is basically having a baby with somebody. And then as a result of that process, actually realizing that um, fundamentally the relationship wasn't beneficial, and actually ended up getting toxic. And ironically, toxic around the fact that we put together this book, which is a guide of how to ditch the act to build relationships. And one of the things that we talk about is oversharing. You can overshare. You can share too much information, TMI. It can maybe come too fast. It can maybe come too soon. But there were some situations where my co-author shared too much, and it was too much for me. And it was one of the hardest decisions that I had to make, where years of building a business, years of building reputation, years of building a brand, years of writing a book, publishing a book, and then making the decision for my own health and wellness to separate, to leave the company, to end the relationship with someone who was a friend and a business partner. And I feel so good about that decision that it makes me recognize how much I've grown as a person. Now, remember, I talked about belonging, which is something that from a very early age is something that I've sort of, it's been important to me. And it's something that I've always, sort of chased after, because at an early age, I didn't feel like I belonged. And that has come up to bite me a few times in the business partners that I work with. I've had business partners physically attack me. I've had business partners who have stolen from me and from a company. I've been dragged into an FTC investigation 8 years after I left a company. And I don't think that I learned the lessons that I should have along those ways. Like, I'd sort of slowly learned, but I just kept getting back into that same trap, because I'm so quick to trust and I so want to belong that I don't see these tiny little red flags. And I think it was writing the book, me being more honest about my own feelings, and me being more self-aware of what was healthy or not. It was all of those things, all of my experiences up until that point, that gave me, I guess, really the power to say, this is not right for me anymore, and I'm going to go in this direction. And trust me, that was a dishwashing situation I wanted to hide. Here's this amazing book, and I'm so proud of the book. Oh, but you're not with the company anymore? No. How come you have him blocked on all your social media channels? Well, let's talk about this. I'm willing to ditch the act and share that with you. So ironically, one of the decisions that I'm most proud of is a situation of leaving something that I was so proud of and making it something that I am proud of. And I think that the lesson for me is that things will go wrong. People that you once work well with, you won't work well with, or people who are friends, it's okay if they're not friends anymore. But it's because I was conscious, I was self-aware, and I shared what I felt was the right amount of information along the way that felt true for me. And leaving a business and a book that I built and wrote was the best thing that I could have done, because it truly was the essence of the book. Like, I did not hide what I was feeling. I was able to confront my emotions. I was able to articulate what I wanted for myself. And I feel so much more independent and powerful because of it. And I haven't lost any type of a stride. So that's the thing that's been most recent and most sort of challenging to deal with. But people get stuck with business partners that it becomes unhealthy. And when you don't have the strength to make a decision to leave, you can really waste time. You can lose money. You can lose part of your soul. There's things that you just can't get back. And so I'm very appreciative of what I've learned from Leonard and the relationship that we had. And part of that is, as a result of what I've learned in that process, is having the courage to step away from that relationship.
It sounds like a huge PR stunt, like literally. I know it's real, but it sounds like did you guys scripted that? It's like let's write a book about ditching the act, and then let's just
And
based
then
on
let's
that.
break up afterwards. But
This is
as you
amazing.
finish listening to the book, you'll really get to understand that we are two completely different people. And I think that is what makes this book so powerful, because I can't assume everybody's like me, and we can't assume everybody's like Leonard, but we're on such far ends of the spectrum that, like, there's everyone in between kind of probably fits in and can relate to it. So
Oh,
the
I can
process of
relate.
writing the book Ditch the Act helped me and helps me to continue to ditch the act, to just empower myself with what's true to me.
And I think that's such a great another great lesson. I can relate to so much to your story because mentioning the video production business that I've been in a partnership with a business partner. He's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. He's fantastic. We just do things differently. We think differently. We're just not compatible as business partners. But I love the guy. He's amazing. I learned so much. If it wasn't for these experiences, oh my god, so many lessons. I had to grow up and show up as a so there's so much gratitude in our experiences, and we didn't know any better, right? At the time, you just you think you do, and you just
Because, see, experience is what you get just after you need it. And so if I would have had this experience, and then if I would have gone back in time and written the book again, I think there would have been a few tweaks as far as what I had learned from the lessons. But as you said, you gotta show up, and you gotta grow up. And I think that the more you are in tune with what is right for you, ultimately, the better it serves everyone. And if you're in a relationship, a personal relationship that's not healthy, if you're not able to find the strength to recognize that and leave that, then there's a lot of people that are miserable. Same thing with business partners, same things with friendships. And in the pandemic, I think we've all had a chance to really see each other's true colors, and to find the things that we really enjoy, and find the time that we really enjoy spending with certain people. And also, it helps reinforce the time that we're okay not spending with certain people, and that's okay. And this gets back to the core of the book. It's like, you don't have to be all things to all people, but you should be true to yourself. And when you're not true to yourself, you end up putting on these different acts, and not being genuine, and life is just more stressful and more anxiety. And there's so many examples at all levels where if you're not taking care of yourself, and you pretend that you are, it's going to end up bad. It will. It'll come out in lashing out to somebody that you love, or it'll come financially, it'll ruin you, or there's just this fear of sharing what's going wrong is so real. But the more you find the courage to start to share along the way, you'd be surprised. People aren't going to judge you. They're going to be there to support you. They're going to give you ideas. They're going to give you solutions to this problem. But if you just pretend like everything's always okay, then, like, they don't know to help you out. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages of ditching the act, is like just being honest with what you need help with. Oh, no, I'm fine. My mom would always be like, Ryan, are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. I'm fine. No, Ryan, no, Mom, I'm fine. And, like, she knows something's wrong, but, like, I wouldn't admit it. No, I'm fine. No, things are fine. Well, why are you crossing your? Oh no, I know. I'm like, so our parents, people who know us the most, they know when something's wrong. It's hard to hide from them. But other people, it's way easier to hide stuff from, because they don't know you. They're like, oh, is everything okay? You're like, yeah, I'm fine. You're like, okay, perfect. You're fine. But what if you're not fine? Imagine if somebody's like, hey, how you doing? You're like, I don't know. I've been kind of down out the last couple days. You think they're going to be like, you're a loser? No, they'll be like, oh, well, do you want to talk about it? Is there anything I can do to help? Well, no, there's nothing really you can do to help. Just know that it's been a rough couple days. Okay, I respect that. And now you have this, like, actual interaction, a human conversation, people connecting together. So if you see it as vulnerability and that's scary, see it as sharing your experiences. And if that doesn't make sense, just try to be more honest with people about what's really going on. And they will then be able to help you out. Or they'll be able to share similar experiences that they've been wanting to share.
And vulnerability, as you say, it actually is strength. It's not a weakness. And there is the difference between I'm sharing from a place of a victim and I'm sharing from a place of strength. I fucked up. I don't know how to do about these things, guys. I need your help. Right? There's a difference between this and I don't know what to do. Like, okay, sometimes we get there, that's fine, but you can be strong and you can be vulnerable. I have a very dear friend of mine. He was also on the podcast, Dr. James Arthur Williams, very inspiring guy who grew up in an environment of very bad environment. And he was, as he calls himself at the time, he was a thug selling drugs, and he had two kids at the age of 17, I think. No idea what to do, selling drugs, almost killed a person, almost shot somebody when in a really bad night, and went on a journey to completely transform his life. And now he's a professor in university teaching people for such communities to what are the good values and what to focus on. And one of the things he always speaks about now that he's gone through this crazy 20-year journey is we always somehow wearing some sort of masks. Like, why do we wear a mask? Why don't we show up as who we really are? Because we try to please somebody or to fulfill some certain expectations. And what if we start slowly? Maybe there's many masks, but slowly, like, just put on one mask away, and because the real you is always there, right? It's not like I need to find myself somewhere. No, you're already here. But problem is there are so many masks that we can't really see you.
Yeah, and then you add filters to it, right? On social media, and it becomes a point where it's like if you're not comfortable seeing your own face, like there's a larger sort of issue, and it's like in the digital age, we're like I'm literally seeing myself as I talk to you, whereas like this is sort of a newer phenomenon, and we're all like my mom, she's like she's more like up here and trying to figure it out, but it's like there's so much value put on how we are perceived, that process, that energy that we're doing to put on the mask or to create the mask or to formulate the mask for that particular situation, it's like the energy, think of the energy that you spend on putting those masks on. Like if you got more comfortable with the mask that you have, find that consistency, that energy can put they can be put other places. It's not easy though. And perception is kind of reality. And my dad always said, if you look like a duck and you sound like a duck, you're a duck. And this was when I was trying to wear saggy pants because that was cool. But they're like, no, you can't wear saggy pants. I'm like, but I'm not a gangster. They're like, but you have saggy pants, you look like a duck, you act like a duck, people are going to think you're a duck. And we have to acknowledge that there is a reality. If I showed up in, I don't know, a suit and tie, maybe you'd think about me differently. And I thought to myself before this, I was like, do I need to put on a collar shirt or what? And I was like, I'm wearing a t-shirt. Like, this is cool. If I want to show up in a t-shirt, this is what I'm wearing right now. Right. So it's like, it's important to be aware of your audience. Like, you want to be respectful. You don't want to show up in your pajamas. Although I have sweats on right now, I'm not going to lie. But
same here. I'm not.
I think the balance is being aware. You have to be aware of your audience. Okay. But you don't need to dress up for the audience. You don't need to put on an act for the audience. There's certain things that you can do that makes it entertaining, and certain tactics and certain best strategies when it comes to communicating. But at the core, you can tell when somebody's being genuine and when somebody's not. And when people are really good at hiding being genuine, then there's this sort of positive feedback loop. They're like, wow, they really like me, I'm going to keep this act on. Wow, they're going to really like me, I'm going to keep this act on. But do they really like you, or are you just assuming that they like you because that's what you thought it was in the first place? And I think that uniqueness is needed right now. If every speaker looks and talks the same, like what's the difference? So I think we all have an opportunity to, it's not almost as much as taking off the mask, but like being your unique, or if you're going to make a mask that's super crazy and unique and that has your own uniqueness. We just have to acknowledge that some people put on masks as a self-defense or because that's what they want, they think other people want. But do you really know what they want? They want somebody who's genuine. They want somebody who's honest. They want somebody who's going to be the same person today and in 30 days and in a couple years. So
the reason we're speaking today, by the way, is because I've been following your podcast, World of Speakers, for a couple of years now. And the reason I really like to talk to you is like, this guy is so cool. He's just honest. He's not trying to be somebody else. He's not trying. Are there more famous podcast hosts than you? Probably. But do I want to talk to them? I don't know. I kind of felt like I know you without knowing you.
Well, that is one of the biggest benefits, right? If we're trying to think of a benefit for somebody to realize here, I talked a little bit about a LinkedIn bio, right? Okay, you only have a certain amount of space. If I go to your website, assuming that you have one, and I go to your about page, because this is your property, how much information are you giving? People will go to my website. They might hear me here, and they'll be like, okay, I'm going to go to Ryan.online, and then I'm going to click on this about. What's this kid all about? I give you my journey. I give you when I was bullied. I give you my martial arts. I give you about hockey. I give you all this information. It's up to you whether you want to read or not. I have had people who I meet for the first time, and they're like, Ryan, this may sound weird, but I kind of feel like I know you. I'm like, awesome. That's great, because everything you need to know about me is out there. You like it or you don't. And so it is nice to help people get to know you for who you want to be known for. And that essentially is a personal brand, because the information that people can find about you, what I call these little brand crumbs, if they find it, they're going to patch it together in their mind, and they're going to come up with the idea of who you are. If you don't give them anything, then they're going to jump to conclusions. Their biases will kick in, and they'll take other people's opinions for it. So why not just give them the information? And so I encourage people to share more about who they are online and some of the backstories, because it helps to shortcut that relationship so that you can invest the time into finding those commonalities.
This is such an amazing advice also in terms of when you are planning your content strategy, instead of 5 steps to do this and that, which is okay, it could be useful, but how can I use my experience and stories in order to portray similar information, useful information, but through stories, through my experience, so people can get to know me better. And Ryan, what I want to really get into is, we're talking about showing up as the real you, but I gotta say, at certain period in my life, I actually didn't know who I was. So how do you actually get closer to who you are? Do you, Nick, maybe from your experience, if you can share what helped you to get to know yourself better, and what do you like? How do you want to show up? What are the values and principles that you stand for?
Great question. And that's step one. One of the things that I recognized, and one of the things that Leonard helped me to recognize when I first met him, was that I was doing all of the right things. I was writing, I was speaking, I was on social, I was doing all of the right things, but I was doing them in the wrong order. And I think this is applicable not only to personal branding, but to all kinds of stuff in life. Sometimes it's very easy to find what you need to do, but it's very hard to find in what order they should be done. And your question is really at the root of, look, we're talking at these things once you've kind of established, but you could very easily do things out of order and just not get any traction, not have it work. And the first step is understanding who you want to be known for. It's such a hard step that people usually start it, and then they're just like, and then they skip over it, and then they start writing, and then they start speaking, they start doing these things, and they will look like I looked, which is like a ginger chicken with its head cut off, running in every direction, trying to do all kinds of stuff. So there's an exercise that I work with people, and it's outlined in the book. It's called the Rapid Reflection Discovery Process. And it's based on the simple principle that defines a personal brand. I believe a personal brand is not just what you want to be known for. I believe that a personal brand is not just what everybody else thinks about you. It's actually the intersection. So if you want to be known as somebody who likes to sail, and other people are like, that dude Ryan, that guy always says ahoy instead of hello, and he's got photos of sailboats in the background, and he's always talking and tweeting about sailing, I think he's a sailor. Ding, ding, ding. I want to be known as a sailor. People see me as a sailor. That's a core brand attribute that I can own and that I can do. So the process, which is a really fun exercise, and people, if you're listening now, I'll give you just the real simple steps. First, decide what you want to be known for. And, well, I don't know what I want to be known for. Well, what would you want to be known for? Like, you have to get stuck on that first question. Okay. Like, think about what you like to do professionally. I like to speak. I like to write. I like to XYZ. I like to make videos. Like, professionally, what do you enjoy doing? Personally, what are your personality traits that you like the most? For me, I love just, there's something about having energy and just high energy, and like I get excited about stuff. So like I'm a high energy person. Now you may also be somebody who is funny. You may be somebody who is reserved. You may be somebody who is outgoing. Like there's personality traits. Start to identify what those are. Then what do you like to do? So you've got your hobby, which is a sailing. You've got your profession, and then you've got your personality. So those are like 3 core attributes. Sit down and write as many as you can for each category. This is what I would like to be known for from a hobby standpoint when I'm doing things for fun. This is what I'd like to be known for professionally, and this is what I'd like to be known for personally. Gather that data by yourself. Write them down. I like to use Post-it notes. Then go out to your family, your friends, your coworkers, people who know you, people who kind of know you, people who don't really know you, and say, hey, I'm doing this fun exercise. Can you share with me what you think I do for fun, what you think I am personality-wise, and what comes to mind professionally when you think about me? So you get this data from all these people. Then you put their data on a different color Post-it note. So you have your opinion on one color and everybody else's opinion on a different color. Put it up on the wall, and you can start to group these together. Some will be outliers. You'll think that you'll want to be known as somebody who loves to, I don't know, read books, and nobody else sees that in you. Probably because you've never talked about a book that you've read, right? So this one's off to the side. Maybe somebody sees you as something, they're like, oh, he loves to paint, but maybe I really don't like to paint. So that one's off to the side. But you'll find clusters where you have at least one of each of the Post-it note colors. And now you can sort of eliminate everything and see these big buckets of personality traits, professional traits, and things that you like to do for fun. And then you narrow those down to the top one for each of those. And now you have a foundation on what you want to be known for. For me, I want to be known as somebody who loves to sail. I want to be known as somebody who is a speaker. And I want to be known as somebody who just brings energy wherever I go. And those then can be the guidelines for the content that you create, the colors of your brand, the messaging in which you put forward. And so if you look at any of my profiles, you'll see something about sailing. You'll see something about speaking. And you'll see something about my high energy. And so that's a really good way to start with step 1, is to think about what you want to be known for. Ask other people what they already see in you, and then find some of those intersections. And it's a great place to start. Now, let's say that that I now get into a new hobby and I like to do underwater basket weaving, but nobody knows that about me. Well, if I want that to be a core trait, I can add a story about it. I can tweet about it. I can make a video about it. I can share that I'm starting. That's what I'm doing with NFTs. Like, I really love the space because I'm a stick figure artist and I love the technology. I'm bullish on 5G as well as the metaverse and all these things. But it's like, Ryan, this NFT, where's this coming from? I've been dripping it in for the last couple months. So it's like, now you see it in my bio. Now you see it here. And as I start to even drop the mention here, I'm starting to now be associated with it. So starting in a certain spot gives you the clarity of direction that you can go. And once you're going, you can always navigate a little to the left or a little to the right, but you're bringing people along with the journey.
Right. Thank you so much. This is so practical. Guys, you gotta re-listen to this episode, by the way. But we have a question. You mentioned the metaverse. So we have a question from Anya. And the question is, first of all, she says, great insights, Ryan. Do you see a cultural shift happening with the Web3 metaverse and individual creators, etc., rising? Will transparency and vulnerability soon become the new normal? How are things shifting from your perspective?
Great question. And yes, the times they are changing. And what I see for Web 3.0, and for those that don't know the Web 3.0, think about we're stepping into the third iteration of what it means to be online. First, you had sort of very basic computing and like the squeaky internet to get you're on internet's very basic, more chat based. Then Web 2.0 became more about mobile phones and video, so that we're interacting with video, but we're still stuck on these little screens. Web 3.0, with 5G enabled, lower latency and bigger bandwidth, and with technology of the form factors like the different headsets, augmented virtual reality and mixed reality. The next Web 3.0 is that right now, this is 2-dimension. I'm looking at you at a flat screen. But 3.0 will be where we can be into the metaverse, which could be one of a whole bunch of different environments that are created. And we could be 3D avatars sitting next to each other, talking in the same way, but like instead of looking 2D, we would be in the same virtual environment together. And so Web 3.0 is this transition to like a 3-dimensional internet. And what I think you're going to see is smaller and smaller communities, but more and more of them. Okay. I think that's what's going to be really special, and that's what's going to change. When it comes to transparency and vulnerability, gosh, this is where NFTs are going to really take over, because we buy things as social signals. Okay. The car that you drive is kind of a social signal. The content that you create is a social signal. The way that you do your hair is a social signal. The way that you have a trimmed beard is your social signal. You with the headsets, it's probably some sort of social signal that you're sending out. And in the real world, it's, oh, I've got this, this nice double there, and I've got this, and I've got these different things. In the metaverse, the same thing will happen. But now you can create a digital avatar that is a social signal of whatever you want. Now, on one end, it can help people hide from their true dishwasher identities, right? And they can show up as this like big, massive, strong avatar, but really they're just like the most meek and like scared person ever. Okay. So there can still be an extreme fake it, right? Like to the extreme of like changing the way your voice sounds and changing the way that you look. But on the flip side, you can use this metaverse to really social signal how you really want to show up. I mean, maybe you show up as something that represents your vision or your values or something, and you have this fluidity. So now instead of just choosing what suit you're going to wear, you can literally choose what your whole, I'm going to show up as a walrus today. I'm going to show up as a lion today. And so I think it'll open up the opportunity to be more self-expressive. I think to be more artistic. And if you do want to see what some of this looks like, I would encourage you to check out Mark Zuckerberg did his keynote and really explain a lot of this. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of Facebook, now Meta and all this stuff, but there is a metaverse and it will continue to expand. There's going to be more options. and there's going to be smaller communities. There's somebody building a trailer park metaverse, and I bought a trailer the other day. I minted one for like $300 or $400 plus gas fees, right? All on the Ethereum platform. So like now I have, like, I'm more of a boat guy, but it's okay. I have a trailer that's in a metaverse in a trailer park, that when they launch the metaverse, if I just want to go hang out in a trailer, I can just pop on my glasses and go hang out in a trailer. So I think it's an opportunity to be more transparent through social signaling, but on a digital level. And I think that NFTs, sure, there's arts and there's monkeys and there's stuff like that, and there's a buy low and sell high, but don't think of it as just Bored Ape Yacht Club. This is anything that can be digitized, can be documented and owned and created and commerce and sold and things like that. So it's a great question, and I think it's going to be exciting. So you'll have more and more of an opportunity to signal what you want to be known for, just on a whole new level, like that, being creative and three-dimensional. It's gonna be crazy. It's coming. Watch out.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. That's for sure. So you better jump up early on the new sort of things that are coming. Ryan, I have a question. This is gonna be a final question because I want to respect your time. It's morning where you are right now. Of course, I'm going to bed, but you have the whole day in front of you. And the question is connected to, now you've done close to what, like 100 episodes for the world of speakers. The episode that I mentioned a couple of times, and you speak to a lot of professional speakers. You yourself are a professional speaker. For those people who are into speaking, what are like the three sort of pieces of advice that come to mind for how can we build a great speaking business in 2021? Like, what are some of the trends that will give you an edge as a speaker in 2021?
I think one is going to be building your own website. I think from everybody that I've spoken to, it's a common theme that surprisingly not everybody takes advantage of. Just from the mere sake that the only place you own online is your own website. You don't own your Facebook, you don't own your Twitter, you don't own any of that. And so if you truly do want to, start to get some traction as a speaker, then put your hand up and say, I'm a speaker and here's my website. On that website, you can let people get to know you. You can share your experience. You can show them examples of your work. You can show them speaking. You can have this all in a package that you can deliver, and it makes people take you seriously. So if you want to gain traction and you don't have a website that showcases you as a speaker, then that's one of the first steps you're going to miss. If you are intimidated by building a website, then you can literally go to Speaker Hub, which sponsors my podcast, and you can create a profile which highlights all of your speaking experience. It acts as a splash page. So speakerhub.com, you can create that. And there's other platforms as well, but step number one is like own a little bit of real estate online that identifies you as a speaker. Number two, the best way to become a better speaker is to speak more. You would be surprised how many people want to be a speaker but have not either given a speech, or maybe they just talk at their company in different capacities and they know they have the skills. And so why not get paid for this? You cannot underestimate practice. Do you have a pocket speech? If I ask you to do a 15-minute speech in the next 5 minutes, could you start? Do you know what you're talking about? And I think that something like Toastmasters can help facilitate that process. Or if you have other accountability partners. But the thing about speaking is it's very easy to think about a talk. It's very easy to write a talk. It's very easy to want to have a TEDx talk. It's very easy to want to get paid the $20,000 for a keynote. And I think a lot of the energy at an early stage is focused on that versus writing an awesome keynote or creating a kick-ass TEDx talk. So I think focusing on that content and being comfortable speaking, I think, is something that is definitely step number two. Okay. You don't have to be a great public speaker. You just have to do a lot of speaking to become better and better and better. That could come in the form of podcasting. That could become in the form of being a guest on a podcast. I look at public speaking as something that we do all day. If you speak in public, you're a public speaker. So a few little tips on this. When somebody asks you how your weekend was, that's an opportunity for a little mini 2-minute talk. When you're talking with your wife at the end of the day and she's like, how was your day? Oh my gosh. So there I was in the middle of a podcast. And like, it's a practice to tell a story. When somebody calls you on the phone, you have an opportunity to give a little bit of a story. So I find that people wait until they get the opportunity, and then they stress out about the opportunity, and then they give the performance and maybe it wasn't as good as it was. And then it's just like, practice before the big show. That's number 2. And number 3, to get a leg up in today's environment, you've got to adopt digital. You've got to adopt digital. I have an investment that I have around here. I have a nice professional microphone that you don't see that's right here. I have a nice Sony camera. I have an A10 Mini Pro. I have a monitor. Like, I have a professional setup, and that's why I can call for the fees that I call for, because I'm not showing up in a grainy whatever. Like, invest in a digital setup that you're comfortable with. Have the right lighting, have the right audio, be able to, like, I'm so Zoom advanced, it's not even funny. Like, I'm clicking around and I've got multi-screens and cameras, and people are like, how do you do that? Because I've been doing it for about a year, over and over. There's no secret. So I would say, number 1, build a website or use something like Speaker Hub to create a speaker profile. Second, practice. Figure out what you're going to talk about. Put the work in. Give a keynote to teddy bears or give a keynote to no one in particular at a park. But I'm telling you, so many people who want to be speakers don't practice the art of speaking. And that creates a leg down. And then finally, invest in digital. Jump into the metaverse, learn about NFTs, understand what some of these platforms are doing, because I have a buddy now, Mitch Jackson. He and I are real bullish on the metaverse and understanding, instead of meeting via Zoom, we're going to spatial.io, and with our avatars, we're going into these different environments and we're meeting. So instead of here, like, we're already doing this. So the earlier you are at adopting these new mediums, and we're still super early, the newer you can do it. And I'll give you one example with NFTs. I'm working to a point where if you want me to consult with you, instead of paying me, you go to my website under consulting and you buy one of my NFTs. That NFT unlocks the consulting. I'm working towards my offerings of my speeches as, here's a visual representation of what the speech will give you. And then if that's what you like, you purchase that with Ethereum, and it unlocks the keynote that you would have just sort of transacted. So I'm looking at transacting digitally and giving my customers ownership of digital assets as a result of the whole process. Is it perfect? No. Am I learning as I go? Yes. Am I making mistakes? Sure. But in 2 or 3 years from now, when I'm giving a hologram speech in Dubai in front of 3,000 virtual people, I'm going to look back and be like, that's because I was super bullish in the beginning and willing to like be an early adopter. And I think that's going to make a big difference, especially moving forward.
The surprising power of the real holographic you, I guess.
Yes.
Fantastic. Right. Thank you so much for being with us, for sharing all these insights. And since we got to wrap up this episode, could you maybe share, I'm sure there's a lot of people interested now to go check out your NFTs, to hire you as a coach, maybe for their upcoming TED Speak, or maybe a corporate like executive is looking right now to get you as a speaker. Maybe just in a few sentences, can you share what are you focused on these days? How can people get in touch and get you on board to support them on their journey?
Great question. Thanks for the softball. The easiest way to find all that information is to go to my website, and my website's online, and my name is Ryan. So if you want to find my website, it's ryan.online. Ryan.online. Now, when you're there, you can click on the NFT tab and you can learn about my new projects that are coming up, connect you with what that happens. When it comes to my speaking, I typically speak about authenticity, kind of what we talked about today, or core messaging. Those are the two things I like to do the most. And I give either an actual multi-day workshop or just regular keynotes, and I can also spin them off into different shapes and sizes. So if you're interested in having your employees understand the power of vulnerability and that it is courage and it helps people work better in teams, I got you covered there. And if you have a startup or a scale up or an enterprise and you want everybody to be on the same page about the core messaging, about the product, about the problem that you solve, I've got some interesting curriculum that is revolved around that. And then you can find me on Twitter. That's usually where I'm most active, at Ryan Foland. And if you're into sailing, I've got a sailing podcast for you. If you're into speaking, I've got a speaking podcast for you. And if you're into the hot seat on communication, I've got a podcast for you.
Boom. And if you're into books and or audiobooks, he has a book for you as well.
Yep.
Which the Act.
Yep. And I would actually wrap it up with a few bars. Here is the deal. Let me give it to you real. The key to connection is to learn to reveal, because you are not perfect and neither am I. And that is the exact reason that we see eye to eye, because everybody's different, but we are all the same. To be perfectly imperfect is how you win the game. And if you only showcase good and do not share the bad, you will miss connections that you never knew you had. Facegram, Twitter, book, are you LinkedIn? Are you snapping out a TikTok trying to fit in? Stop worrying about everybody else and focus on being your authentic self, because when you learn to ditch the act and learn to be yourself, you open up a window to have people help you out. There we go. That's what I got for you.
Love it. Thank you so much, Ryan. And if you guys enjoyed this episode of Productivity Mastery, episode 85 with Ryan Foland, there's 84 more episodes, so you can definitely go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other major podcast platform. Subscribe there, give us a review, share with a friend, and enjoyed listening. See you once again next time on Productivity Mastery. Thank you so much, Ryan, for being with us.
Peace out. It's great to be here, buddy.